Okay.
We are recording.
All right. So the Parks Committee meeting, just December 11th, 2024 is now in session. We'll go ahead and do roll call. Alder Presley.
Here.
Alder DeLee.
Here.
Alder Weary.
Here.
Myself, we're all here, so we can move on. Let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance before we continue. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. All right, looking for an approval of the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, we have first motion to approve is Alder Weary and second to Alder Presley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and that's approved. Approval of the minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, motion by Alder DeLee, second by Alder Presley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and those are approved. So we will move on to regular business, the one item. Consideration with possible action on the approval of General Ordinance Number 30-24, an ordinance amending Section 28-4 Green Bay Municipal Code relating to alcohol beverages.
I'll defer this to James to give a brief summary.
Okay.
So, as you can recall, a few months ago, we brought an ordinance so, staff officials could actually sell alcohol in the parks. And when we were going through that process, I noticed when I was looking at all our policies and all our different things we have in our department that we have this ordinance that essentially when you reserve a shelter, you can then have alcohol at the shelter. But we had a very interesting, so we had some parks that you could, and we had other parks that you couldn't.
Yeah.
And I kind of dug into that a little bit, and I researched it, and I looked through our files, and we talked to Dan. He's been here 22 years, and I was like, where did this come from? Why the difference? And I talked to our law department. I'm like, is there some reason why we have particular ones that do and don't? And they said, no, there's no reason behind it. And so we just decided, let's clean this all up and just make it straightforward. You reserve a shelter, you can have alcohol at the shelter, essentially, with your reservation. So that's essentially, it's just cleaning up the ordinance to make it really straightforward. So now it's more, whatever park. We still have in there Bay Beach as one of the spots that you can have alcohol at without a reservation. But the other ones that were in there before, like Colburn and Perkins and some of the other ones, there was no really rhyme or reason why those were in there. We couldn't figure out why, so we just decided to make it straightforward and update it.
And any questions? Alder Weary.
Thanks, Chairperson. Softball games, after softball games. For decades, I've seen play a softball game, people getting a little cooler and have a couple beers. Saying that's really never should have been allowed, or you're going to crack down on that now and send the PD in there? And
That is something that we're considering to take a look at in the
Okay.
future. Exactly, but yes, technically, there is no, without a reservation, there is not supposed to be alcohol consumed at the games, yes.
Even in the previous ordinance, when you read it, you could see that wasn't allowed.
I know, I'm just
So,
saying that.
Well, except for Colburn, which would be probably what he's talking about.
No,
Well, the list had crossed it out now.
yeah. I think of the park in your district that has all the baseball fields.
yeah, that'd be MacArthur
MacArthur.
Beaver Dam Park.
Beaver Dam.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, I was just-
damn, yeah.
Just curious.
Does-
Don't see it being honored though.
Does technically
Yeah.
the teams playing at those fields, that's a reservation, isn't it?
But it's not a shelter reservation.
Okay.
We're just limited.
Is it
this
only
to a
shelter reservations?
reservation.
Okay.
Right now, yes.
Something to look at, because
Mhm.
I can tell you it's been done for 30 years, and maybe we just say, it's against the law, but we're never really ever going to enforce it. Because we have park supervisors there, we have officials there.
And what we have done is we have researched other municipalities as far as, that topic goes, and what we found is pretty much across the board, municipalities do not allow that for field rentals for games. So unless it's a special event like a tournament or something.
So it sounds like it'll be something that we're gonna say no to, but it'll continue and we'll not do anything, okay.
Well, we'll have more discussion with the law.
Okay, I'm just saying.
It's just not addressed in the
I know.
ordinance changes right now.
Just telling you it happens and it
I think the
will.
big piece of why we brought this is because, and the timing of it, is because we do open up shelter reservations starting the beginning of the year. So we wanted to address the shelter reservations first. I will say that we probably will look at some of the other aspects to this as we go on. That's probably won't be the last time that we address different things related to.
Just something to look at. I played in Schwabenon, Bellevue, Alley, Howard.
Mhm.
It's everywhere, it's not just here, so
Yeah.
maybe it's something we just don't want to address in here, don't care about, but maybe we should address it, I don't know.
Will there be, I mean, is there going to be signage or anything that tells people this?
On our city webpage, when you rent a shelter, right now, we currently say which shelters allow alcohol and which ones don't. We'll obviously modify that if this gets approved, and we'll say, you know, at all shelter rentals, it would be allowed.
Okay, but as far as at the fields where,
No, it would just
The
be
people
when
that
they
are-
rent it, because again, this is part of a rental agreement for the most part, so when somebody rents a shelter, they know all the rules up front. We give them the rules, and this only applies when you rent a shelter. So you still can't go and picnic and bring, you know, a case of beer with you and just sit at a picnic table. That's not allowed, except for, you know, Bay Beach Amusement Park, which has always been allowed there in the picnic areas.
okay,
So.
all right, thank you.
mhm.
Any further discussion?
I think we just need to relook at that. I don't know why you couldn't, as a private party, bring alcohol if you're of age and you're a fellow adult, so just look at it.
Are you making any suggestions for changes?
No, staff said they were gonna look at it anyway, so
Okay,
a lot of time till spring.
all right, any other, any questions? I'm looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
A second.
Okay, Alder Presley, moves to approve and seconded by Alder Delete. All those in favor say aye,
Aye.
and those not in favor say nay. Okay,
No vote.
no vote. All right, and I guess I'll go on the record as saying yay. So 3-1.
Silence is assent.
Okay, so. And informational. Staff presentation of a proposed master plan for the Joannes Aquatic Center.
So I'll put the presentation up on the TV monitor so that we can kind of talk to it, and it's just easier to see what we're talking about if you have something to look at in front of you.
Okay.
So to kick off this discussion, I just want to start out by saying, you know, Joannes Aquatic Center was built over 30 years ago, or close to 30 years ago, and it's showing some wear and tear. There's certain maintenance improvements that are going to have to be done in the next few years if we want to keep that facility open to the public. These are not really kind of wants, these are needs. And if you look at our 5-year capital improvement plan that was presented to the Finance Committee 2 months ago, you'll see that those improvements are laid out in the 5-year capital improvement plan. So just at the last council meeting, you approved the 2025 bond request, which included 2 things for Joannes Aquatic Center. So one was to replace the filters at there for a cost of $250. Those filters are starting to leak. So if you went out there this past summer, you will have seen sand in the basin of the pool. Well, the sand is an indication that there's a leak in the filter, and the sand media is getting into the pool itself. So if we don't replace those filters soon, we may run into an issue where we may have to shut down the pool halfway through the season. So anyway, the city council approved that. We are going to be replacing those filters. In any modifications we make, we're going to need new filters. So that's not money that's going to go to waste. We are planning on keeping that pool open for many years. And so, no matter what scenario we have, we need new filters. So we felt comfortable asking for that now. The other thing that was approved was $200,000 to hire an engineering consultant to do one of two things. Either create the bid documents necessary to repair what we have, like for like, and I'll go over what those are in a minute, or to create engineering documents of phase one of a future master plan, whatever that phase may be. Upcoming high-cost things that are going to come down the road here, which we have in our bond request for 2026 right now, is we have $400,000, it's close to $1.5 million in 2026 bonding towards this facility for three main items. So one is the plaster in the basin of the pool is really starting to pop up. We've been patching it and patching it. It's to the point now where we really have to be replacing that plaster in the entire basin. We're kind of almost to the point where we can only patch so much before we have to do a total replacement. The other thing that needs to be done is there's a leak in the surge tank, which is right next to kind of the deep area of the pool. We have to repair that leak of the surge tank. Also, the gutter completely surrounding the pool, so that's the area where the water flows into the gutter, goes through the recirculation system and comes back out. That's how, how we clean the water. That gutter system it's kind of aged out. So right now we have concrete gutter caps, which they don't make anymore. About 10 years ago, we were able to find a pool in Milwaukee that shut down that had the same gutter caps. And we were able to secure all of those extra gutters from them, so when our pieces break, we have replacement parts. But it's concrete, those are starting to break, and we have had some incidents and accidents where those gutters have failed, and it's not a good situation when that happens, as you can imagine. So we really need to replace the entire gutter system with a brand new system, because we can't just replace the gutter tops. And then finally, the last thing that is a big ticket item is we have the slides, so the big slides that come down. The tower that goes up to those slides is a wood tower. So the ones at Resch Aquatic Center, that was made of steel. But the ones at Joanne's, that's made of wood. That wood is 30 years old. We do have that tower inspected on a yearly basis, so it's safe. I'm not saying it's not safe, I'm not implying that it is, but we do have money in our 2026 bond request to replace that tower in full and just be proactive before it becomes an unsafe condition. Would only last so long. So those 3 or 4 items is $1.5 million, and that's just repairing like for like. So we hired a consultant to just see, is there a desire in the community or with the city council to maybe reimagine a portion of the pool or the aquatic center? And if we have to do some major repairs anyway, does it make sense to look at doing some other amenities and attractions in addition to this and spend a little bit more? And some of these decisions need to be made now because they play into whether or not we replace like for like. Because we don't want to replace all the gutter system and then decide we want to do something with the pool basin a little bit different in the future. So let me kind of go into the master plan itself to show you what's in here. So I know it's kind of hard to see here what's going on, but we do have a kind of a slide showing the entire master plan. And this is the same presentation that's in the agenda packet. And so we do have renderings showing individual areas. But in general, what we're proposing in this master plan is to do several things which accomplish a few improvements that, what we've seen as deficiencies in the pool as far as operations go. So the pool basin right here, as you can see in this master plan, follows the existing pool basin configuration. But if you go out there on a daily basis, you'll see that this large area where the zero depth entry is located is highly underutilized. So you go there and there's a lot of people swimming in the deep area, And there's always just a few kids in that huge expansive area of the zero depth. And so, we're throwing out the idea of what if we were to do a channel current, or a lazy river, let's say, where you hop on a tube, you go through the lazy river. Is that an interest? And if so, how much would that cost? Obviously, if there's a desire to put a lazy river in there, we're not going to spend the money on replacing the gutters and replacing the plaster if there's a desire to rip all that out 10 years from now and put in a lazy river. So that's one thing we're looking at. We also threw out the idea of, okay, if the slides were to go away, what could we put in its place? And we just threw out there an idea of maybe a surf rider, where I don't know if you've seen those in the Dells. Gives another attraction to something that isn't in the area. Would a surf rider be a good fit? Obviously we don't want to spend $500,000 rebuilding that tower if there isn't desire to keep the slides there at all. Our other aquatic center has slides, so do we need one at this aquatic center too? And that's a decision we're going to have to really think hard about as a community. Do we want both aquatic centers to be fairly identical, so you're giving the same resources to both sides of the city, or do you create two very different aquatic centers so that you can tailor your visit to which one fits your family the best? Because obviously a surf rider is not really meant for young kids and families like the slides are. That's more for teenagers or young adults. Not saying that we're proposing to put one in there. Again, this is just a concept for conversation purposes. Then the other thing that we've noticed is that kind of the activity area within the zero depth, or within the pool basin, is not really actively utilized. So, we thought, well, what if we were to maybe look at this facility as maybe extending the season somehow, where we could open a portion of the aquatic center maybe a month early when the pool basin can't be open, but other areas of the aquatic center could, and maybe leave it open later. So in this concept, we actually are showing that maybe you do a splash pad area off to the side where the sand play is currently located. Now, that wouldn't be a traditional splash pad like what we have now, where it's a concrete surface where you push a button and water comes out. This would be maybe more something similar to what you have at the Tundra Lodge, where there's standing water of a couple of inches that's permanently there. So more like a wading pool with a lot of splash equipment in it. So something more like Tundra Lodge and not like the splash pad experience. Then we looked at, well, okay, if we're going to extend the season and be able to open a smaller pool maybe earlier, because it doesn't take the lifeguarding demands that the rest of the pool takes, and also it's easier to heat that smaller amount of water, what else could we do? So we threw out ideas of, maybe a miniature golf course, maybe one of those giant trampolines that you see at campsites, and then even like a little go-kart track. And so in this concept, you're able to maybe open up half of the facility early and keep it open late too, whereas the rest of the pool would be down and just open our standard pool season. In addition, this concept does show kind of an additional shelter in here for rentals. That's something we don't have. We don't have a shelter that can be rented for birthday parties and activities and provide shade. That's another potential that could go in there. I think we even have another bathroom kind of shown in there, so that we don't have to have the full bathroom open. If the pool isn't open, we can have a smaller bathroom off to the side that's open in kind of the off season. And then we also show a lot of cabanas and kind of new hammocks, where you can have additional seating that's kind of unique, and we don't currently offer it there. So we put together this grand concept just for discussion purposes to get out there to the community and the neighborhood and just see what is the interest for this facility. Is there an interest to implement some or all of this? If so, what's important and what would the community like to see? Or do people really like what we have? And we should just be replacing like for like and, save some money. Now, when you look at the cost estimate that's attached here, you'll see that it's a $9 to $10 million project if you were to implement all of this. I'm not proposing that. I mean, I don't think that that's a realistic expectation with what the city can accomplish right now with our funding. But it shows you kind of a cost estimate per element, and so we can kind of pick and choose what becomes phase one. If we are open to putting an investment into this facility, what are the primary areas that we should be focusing on, and how much can we set aside? Let me kind of start going through some of these renderings here so that you can kind of get a better picture of what's going on. This is a kind of an overview of everything, the entire facility. Still hard to see it from this level. Obviously, in the agenda packet, you can see it in areas. You can see here, this shows a good view of what that lazy river would look like. Again, the basin of the pool is really the same. We're just taking out kind of a lot of that zero depth entry and doing a much smaller zero depth entry where that smaller piece of climbing equipment is, and then doing something completely different instead of all of that zero entry. This shows a representation of what that splash pad area could look like. Again, this is exactly where the sand play area is. And this would kind of replace it with something different. This shows the surf rider of where that would go if the slides were to go away, if that's something the community felt was an option. Here's a miniature golf course. This is the go-kart track, and again, this would be pedal go-karts, so not a gas go-karts. This is something that is very safe, and you can just pedal around it as you want. And then here's an example of what that trampoline would look like if you haven't seen those images before. I will say that we did make a presentation to the Joannes Neighborhood Association at their last meeting. Kicked around this concept. I will tell you very positive comments from that. I think everybody was interested in seeing some revitalization of this aquatic center. To what capacity, I guess we didn't really get into that, and I think everybody in that meeting understood that this would have to be a phased approach, and maybe all of this doesn't make it into the final plan when it's all said and done. And then the other thing I do want to share is overwhelmingly everyone in that meeting, and I would say there was probably 15 to 20 people. Alder Prophet can speak to that if she chooses to, but overwhelmingly everyone was unified in saying we don't want the surf rider. Just not a good fit for the neighborhood. It's a very specialized use. And really, only one, or you can buy a double wave rider, but that doubles your cost. So you really don't get a lot of bang for your buck. And that's, what we wanted to hear. That was part of the discussion was, do you see that working here or not? And so it was good to get that feedback from the neighborhood. I will tell you that at that meeting, the neighborhood really didn't strongly oppose keeping the slides or removing them. They did say if you choose to remove the slides, we'd like something else to go in, just not maybe the wave maybe not the wave rider. I guess one idea that was thrown out there is maybe a bumper boat area instead. But again, we haven't really gotten a lot of public input on this. We had one public meeting. I know I just received one email from a resident earlier this week with their opinions on the slides and the surf riders and stuff like that. And I'm not asking for really I'm not asking for any decisions to be made tonight. The purpose of the meeting was just to get the word out there that we're looking at this, and we do have to make some decisions very quickly on what we want our consultant to focus on. Do we want them to focus on literally replacing like for like to create engineering documents to do that, or do we want them to focus on a phase one? Which maybe isn't like to like. Maybe it is putting in that lazy river as part of this, because obviously my concern is replacing the plaster and replacing the gutter if there's a desire to put this lazy river in 5 to 10 years down the road. I think at least as far as the lazy river goes, or that zero depth entry, we have to make some quick decisions of what we want to do with that area, because we are going to have to replace those gutters and we are going to have to replace the plaster fairly soon. Otherwise, we open the risk of opening the facility, and if something happens, we may have to shut down mid-season. Because those are not quick repairs, and they're not cheap repairs either, so you need the money in hand to do those repairs. So I guess from there, we can open it up for discussion, questions, comments. Like I said, this is just getting the information out there. My game plan moving forward is to continue to collect feedback from park committee members, from the city council, from the public. Maybe we'll have another neighborhood input meeting or two, and then come back with a proposal based on all of the input that we receive of whether or not we keep with what we have and, replace like for like, or whether or not we would propose as a staff a phase one. And if we propose a phase one, it would be based on all of the feedback we receive, and we would put some sort of a budget to it with a funding plan. So I can't tell you what that phase one would look like at this point because we haven't put that together. We don't have a budget for phase one other than we know it's in our 5-year capital improvement plan of $1.5 million.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple questions and then I'll go ahead and ask the other alders. So you're saying the gutter needs replacement or repair and the, excuse me, there was a couple other things you said, but what is would that need to be done before this next season, do you think?
No, it would not. Right now, the
Okay.
gutter is working, and but it's something that isn't going to last 10 years. So again, we really, as a city, we need to be proactive if we want to avoid a pool shutdown mid-season, or as we're trying to get the pool up and running, we find a major issue, and then we have to go to the community and say, hey, we thought we could open, but we can't, and we have major issues out there. So I'm trying to avoid that discussion 5 years down the road, which that may be a reality 5 years from now. So I don't think we need to make that, if I felt it was that imperative that these needed to be, improvements right now, it would have been in my 2025 bond request. But we can't continue to postpone these decisions and delay putting at least general maintenance, significant maintenance dollars into this aquatic center.
Okay, and I'm glad to hear you already reached out to Joannes Park neighborhood. That was one of my questions I was going to ask you. And I like the idea of getting more input, and I think that one of the things I thought was the same thing with that wave rider, especially when I saw that you had to do like a safety video before doing it. It just doesn't seem like there'd be that many people that would be able to get through it by the end of the day. Again, I'm glad that there's going to be more discussion, because I think that's important to get the feedback. Because I do think people like the slides, whether they're both, was it two, right? Two.
There's 2 slides.
Yeah, have them both replaced or not, but those are my thoughts. Anybody have any questions? Or
Sure.
Alder Presley?
Thank you, Chair. What is the highest priority replacement that we have right now, or the shortest timeline on where we need to see it? Is that the filters?
I would say the gutters and the plaster. I think the tower could wait a little bit, because like I said, we do annual inspections on those. And if at some point we determine that, it's unsafe, we can just shut the slides down and open the pool.
Right.
But if the basin or the gutters fail, then you're shutting the whole pool down, because you can't open anything at that point.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alder Weary had. Okay.
Go ahead, swing. Oh, boy, pools. A little bit of experience there, right? Yeah, after having gone through Fisk becoming Resch, right, we raised $500,000 for that, and we raised $1 million for Colburn, but those were really more of a demand of the mayor and council at the time. I really don't know if we need to have that, if it's a city-owned facility and we're replacing it, to put that kind of demand, especially when we raised $1 million for Colburn only to have it shot down. That caused a lot of hard feelings that persist to today. So I love the idea of the extending it into spring and fall, so we can get more use out of it. That is excellent. And the rental area, you know, for parties and whatnot, that was supposed to be part of Colburn. Obviously, they got cut for past reasons that we won't even go into, but I think that's a great idea. So it's early. I'm sure you're going to come back with something great. So we want to keep what we have and make it better. So good.
Elder Prophet, did you have anything you want to add?
Oh, yeah. We're grateful as a neighborhood association to see a sneak peek of it for sure. Dan relayed everything really well. I think as a neighborhood association, we've looked at like the volleyball area and where the sand area is. And, you know, over the course of the summer, we saw it never get used. So we always kind of wondered, like, well, we have a volleyball net in our neighborhood park, but not really because we can't access it unless we're at the pool. So I love reimagining that spot and extending it in spring and fall. I love the proposal that's before us, but I'm looking forward to more community input, of course. Maybe the school district, we know how busy that pool gets in summer, so.
Okay,
Love
thank
it.
you. Elder Dewey.
I love the opportunity to advocate for the parks in Green Bay. I think they're great spaces for the community to gather, and a facility like this would not only be for the community, but I think it would really draw from the outside of the community. I think there's a lot of evaluation we need to do on the equipment pieces that are kind of on the proposal right now. And have you designed what a phase program would look like on this, or how many phases, or what you would like to see for a budget in those phases, just to give an idea?
No, we haven't put together a phasing plan right now. I think a lot of it is going to depend on public input.
Sure.
So for example, I think one of the biggest things we need to decide first is, you know, what do we want to do within the basin of the pool itself? And, you know, it's a much different phasing plan, just replacing plaster and spending your other money elsewhere versus putting in the lazy river. Because I think that that's going to have to be one of our first decisions, is what do we want to do within the basin itself? Because I'm fairly confident that our phase one will address the basin and gutter issues. It's going to have to. And so, other than that, we haven't put together a phasing plan or a realistic budget of what the city can afford to do. So once we kind of determine what the public desires and the city council would like to see, then I'll sit down with the finance director and the mayor and see what sort of funding is available, what are our capacities for bonding, does fundraising become a portion of this, and if so, who is going to take the lead on the fundraising? I can see Alder Weary is really fighting hard for that.
The Alder Weary said he had a background in that.
Yes, too.
So, I mean, those are all things we need to consider yet, which it's just too early in the process to really be able to honestly answer that.
Anybody else?
Do you plan more community programs where we can get together and talk about it? And
Yeah, we haven't strategized yet how we're gonna, beyond this meeting, how we're gonna get more public input. Obviously, the park committee and city council is a good starting point, because obviously all the press is here, and hopefully we can figure out how we're gonna get the word out and how we're gonna kind of solicit that input. And we'll figure something out and release that to the public of how that is gonna play out.
Growing up on the west side, I was always surprised to hear that people on the east side could swim. So
Oh, wow.
it's good to see him.
He's joking.
what does that mean?
Joey's over there. Elder Presley is very.
Got to get my west side east side joke in somewhere. It's
Three to
losing its
one on
ability
council.
years go by.
That's right.
I just don't understand.
Anybody else have any questions?
You do a baby.
And then the other thing that I do want to note is when we worked with our consultant on this design, obviously, finding trained lifeguards is an issue. So we told them in any design that we come up with, it's either the same amount of lifeguards or less. And I think we've accomplished that in this concept. So I can honestly say we are not going to need more lifeguards if we were to implement the full plan. We might need more attendants potentially, but those attendants are much easier to fill those positions than the lifeguard positions.
Any other questions? Okay, so, in looking, it's 1.6 million in repairs, or 1.5 to 6, that you were mentioning. and versus a $9 to $10 million cost for the project. So I think realistically, it seems like the phased approach would make more sense. But obviously, I know you're going to look into that, but that's just something that I guess that I'm thinking would be more realistic based on the budget.
Yeah, and I think part of the proposal moving forward is, do we develop a phased project? Or do we just say, this is what we can afford to do, and there's only one phase? You know, I want to be honest to the public too. I hate to promise multiple phases if there's not an interest by the city council to fund those multiple phases. So again, we just threw out a lot of ideas with a big price tag just to solicit feedback so that we can come back with a realistic proposal. But if there isn't a desire by the city council to fund all 2-3 phases over time, then we shouldn't be proposing that, in my opinion.
I mean, I think we're interested in the improvement, just a matter of the price tag.
Yeah.
Which, I know if you take out the surf rider or different things, there's ways to reduce the cost, I'm sure. So, and obviously this was informational, but I didn't know if anybody was, I guess pretty much no one's out there to speak on
Is
this.
there anybody online that would like to speak to this topic? I see there's one person on the,
Bridget, did you want to speak? That she was the one who sent us the email.
okay, it doesn't look like she
Okay.
wants to speak.
All right. So, just looking to receive and place on file.
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file.
Okay, motion by Alder Delete,
Second?
second by Alder Wery. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we go ahead and receive that and place it on file, which I'm assuming that's the right thing to do, right?
That's what I would recommend. yeah.
Okay. All right, and now the director's report.
Again, it's a comprehensive report. I don't really have anything to add. I will say that, last week we were able, because it was colder temperatures, we were able to make a little bit of snow out there.
Somebody told me that.
But there wasn't enough.
Sound
Yeah.
blowing.
There wasn't enough to open up, and I will tell you, Kiwanee ran into the same thing. They made snow last week too. They don't have enough to open up their facilities either. So we're doing the best we can, but we're still, although we can make snow, we're taking some of the weather component out of it. It still needs to be cold enough for us to make snow. So
Yeah. Okay, and looking for a motion on that.
Motion to receive and place on file.
All right, made by Alder Wery,
Second.
second by Alder Presley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and just so everybody knows that this will be going to the full council next Tuesday, December 17th, and where then things will be finalized. And then our next meeting is January 8th, 2025, so next year. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
And, motion by Elder Delee,
Second.
second by Elder Presley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, and we are adjourned.
thank you.
Low blow on these ciders, man.